What's up, everyone? Scott the TroutHammer here, back on the water again for some summertime fishing. Well, back out on the river again, specifically, for the first time in a long time. If you guys see that scenery behind me, you should know what we're doing today. Yeah, it's the middle of June, and your boy had a day off from work, so perfect time to do some fishing. And guys, I haven't done this type of fishing in a long time. There is a part of my intro that I haven't really been fulfilling. That's because of health reasons, and that stuff's actually gotten a lot better. But the other part of it is just I didn't have the time from stuff that was going on in my life. We're back here in this spot for the first time in, man, 5 years. I have not hooked a salmon in 5 years. But we're gonna work on that today. I'm gonna show you guys my rig, show you guys my setup, how I fish for salmon this time of year, give you guys some tips and tricks along the way. But if you guys are new to the channel, hey, welcome aboard. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button down there, notify bell next to it, and click all notifications so you'll be the first to see all great content that's gonna come from this channel.
Yep, you saw me. There you go, guys. That's a fish.
There you go, guys.
That's unreal! Oh, this is such an awesome looking fish. Oh, yeah! All right, guys, check that out.
What, did the dam just dump its garbage or something? So we are on the South San Yam today, and if you guys don't know the spot we're at, I mean, that should be one big dead giveaway. It's actually middle of the day. It's around 1:30, and it's about 70 degrees outside. Now, this is the time I actually prefer to do a lot of my salmon fishing. One is because who else is here? I think that's a big reason, is the pressure is off during this time of day. And I've still caught fish. Every salmon that I've caught on this video has been caught in the afternoon or evening time. But we had to wait for the water levels to kind of come down a little bit to make the spot really good for salmon fishing. So when the waters roll high, fish are just shooting through to get to their spawning grounds. They're shooting through to get to the deadline, to the fish ladder, wherever they're gonna go to spawn. And when the water level comes down, that brings the water in these areas, that puts all the water in these areas to where they have to kind of hold up. It slows the fish down, and those are the areas you want to target. There's going to be these little troughs, little bowls. There's, runs that, there's, deeper channels down that way. But it's those areas that condense the fish that you want to target them. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, normally I'd start out with a big spoon or a spinner, but because it's midday and the temperature does have an effect on the fish, it kind of slows them down even further, makes them a little more lethargic. We're going to stick to row right now. So I keep all my rigs and all my setups down in the description of each video, but if you haven't seen that already, or if you guys are new to the channel, I'll show you what I use here when I go drift fishing for, bobber fishing for salmon and steelhead. Is a 10.5-foot Fenwick Eagle. It is a medium light, moderate action rod. It has enough backbone to really help fight larger fish that are really energetic and have just a ton of fight in them, but also has the action in it to help you cast lighter lures and help you with distance casting. We're rocking a Fluoroclear Trion reel. It is a 5.2-to-1 gear ratio reel, 40-pound P-line HydroFloat line, going to a 12-pound monofilament leader, a 5/8-ounce Bomac float, along with a 5/8-ounce drift weight, and that 12-pound monofilament leader going to a size 1/0 octopus hook with an egg loop knot, and that's to keep the roe up against the hook. So if you're new to this, the purpose of this setup, the HydroFloat line, is to keep that line on the surface, and the length of the rod actually helps with something you're going to want to do the entire time you're salmon fishing. You're going to want to mend your line. The current is actually going to bow the line out and just create this big belly in the line. That's going to go ahead of your bobber, and you actually don't want that to happen. So what you're going to do is you're going to spend a lot of time picking your rod tip straight up and moving the line back, and that HydroFloat line helps keep the line on the surface. Braided line works just as good. So this drift bobber here actually has a knot about 1.5 to 2 feet up. What happens is when this hits the water, that's going to slide up and stop on that knot, so that weight's going to be down there drifting close to the bottom of the river, and then this leader with the roe on the hook is going to be drifting behind that weight. And I got a split shot on here just to help keep that line down close to the bottom. Reason for this setup for salmon steelhead, it's a very natural presentation. It's something that the fish are already looking for. So salmon and steelhead, particularly salmon, they are highly competitive. When they see another fish's roe coming downstream, if they don't recognize it, they see another fish's roe, they swallow it, I mean with prejudice. And they don't do so because they're hungry. They do so because they see that as a competitive fish's hereditary line, and they want to eliminate it. They want their own line, their own hereditary line, to be the one that lives on. So because the fish are going to be packed into those little troughs and valleys and bowls, and they're going to be closer to the bottom, and also that's where the roe is going to kind of be rolling along, we want this as close to the bottom as possible, and I'll show you how to keep this set up to keep that roe down to the bottom. And this is our bait. It's salmon roe. It's cured salmon eggs. You can find this at just about any sporting goods store. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut off about a ping pong ball size of that row. We're gonna pull our egg loop knot to get that ready. And this membrane that's around the row, that's the skein. You wanna hook the row on that skein, slide it up the hook, make sure you leave that hook point exposed, get that egg loop knot wrapped around the skein. And pull it tight. So that's how our setup is going to look. That egg loop knot is going to keep that cluster of eggs close to the hook, and it's going to keep that hook point exposed for when we go to set the hook on the fish. Now I know the area I'm fishing right now to be about 2 or 3 feet deep, so that's where I've got that bobber set to. So right in front of me we've got kind of a bowl, and then there's a ridge of rock and just, you know, crud over there, mostly algae. And then there's kind of another trough right on the other side of that. So we're going to target this bowl first. So the way you can tell if you got your bobber set to the correct depth is how that bobber is riding. If that bobber's kind of leaning forward as it's drifting along, that means the weight is dragging the bottom and it's snagging that bobber, causing it to sort of like pull the tail behind it. If your bobber's leaning backwards, that means it's too shallow. You got too much below that bobber that's actually pulling it forward faster than the bobber is actually going on the surface. But if your bobber's riding straight up and down like that, you've got it in the right depth. And this bobber's gonna be taking short rides through that bowl. So what I was talking about the mending your line is, see how my line is right now leading ahead of my bobber? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up a little bit of that line with the reel, and I'm gonna pick my rod tip straight up and just push it back behind the bobber. That's called mending your line. You don't actually wanna pull your bobber. You don't wanna bring that weight up from the bottom. You just wanna gently pick up that line and keep it behind your bobber. Otherwise, that belly in the line that I was talking about, that's gonna pull your line up and it's gonna pull that weight up. And it's gonna have your row not riding at the depth you want it to. It also doesn't help when the wind is blowing downstream. So the reason why I'm actually standing here close to this bush is I actually want that bush to kind of obscure the fish's view of me. Another tip for salmon and steelhead fishing, these fish have terrific eyesight. I mean, even from like standing here, fish in the middle could probably see me, but it's a reason why I'm wearing the shirt I am, not just because I don't like sunscreen, I don't want to get sunburned, but because it's a white shirt and behind me is a white river bank. Salmon and steelhead fishing is some of the only fishing where I actually say, yeah, camouflage helps. Bass fishing, I don't think it matters that much. Trout fishing, why? So we're kind of on the far inner edge of that bowl right now. That was bottom. If you see your bobber just kind of like that real quick, come right back up, that's typically bottom. That typically means you hit a rock or something. Typically, if it's a fish, the bobber will go just straight down and stay down. Oh, I miss this. Many circumstances over the years have kept me from salmon fishing. I've heard really good numbers about the fishing this year, so I've been itching to get out. There we go. That's a sign of life. That's over in that lane I was telling you about. Oh. Follow the signs of life. That's great. What the hell happened here? Nothing? Yeah, wonderful. Shouldn't be too surprised. After all, salmon fishing is how I got my nickname of the Dr. Strange of fishing, where the impossibilities are endless. That was the day I cast a Palomar knot into my line, meaning at mid-cast, my line had somehow wrapped around my bobber in flight and tied a Palomar knot around itself. And there were witnesses. Well, I mean, nothing else, good opportunity to show you how to, actually get this setup ready. So I'm using a string bobber stop. It's this little piece of yarn that comes on this little plastic tube, and what you do is you feed your line through that tube, grab onto the knot and pull the tube out, and then pull both ends of this line tight. I mean, as tight as you can. It's still gonna slide on that line just fine if you move it, but you don't want it to get wet and then slide on its own and change the depth of the bobber while you're out fishing, and you don't want it to. Cut off these ends. And these things come with this little green bead here. You want to put that on your line next. Now, the knot doesn't actually stop the bobber. The knot stops this bead, and the bead stops the bobber. It's like we're using a 1/2 ounce float right now. And you feed your line through the top of the float down the bottom. So you see what I mean here is that knot stops the bead, and the bead is what stops the bobber. So we're gonna use a 1/2 ounce weight with that 1/2 ounce float, and you want to rig these up so they're kind of teardrop shaped. You want that fatter end on the bottom. So first end you tie on to is the thinner end. And any old knot should get the job done. Grab my pre-tied rigs. Always helpful to be prepared, especially salmon and steelhead fishing. And this is exactly why. So if something breaks, something goes wrong, you can tie up again real quick and not have to go through the whole process of tying up another leader. And I'm still gonna put a split shot a couple inches down from that drift weight on this, just to make sure this keeps riding the bottom. All right, we're ready to roll. Now, are we gonna catch fish today? I don't know, but I'm not just living on a prayer. I'm fishing the correct spot, correct time of year. You know, some may say not the correct time of day, but correct presentation. Salmon and steelhead fishing is all about effort. You don't catch them from the couch. Is one trip in 5 years gonna produce a fish? Let's see. That's how you know you're riding the bottom. So when I'm casting this way, the reason why I'm not casting too far, you can't see it, but on the other side of those bushes, over there about 30 feet away from me, is a dead line. It's that first 1/4 mile of river just below the dam that is prohibited from fishing. Gives the fish an undisturbed area to spawn. One of the ways you can tell when you're actually in the current, or if you're in that bowl I was talking about, see how much faster my bobber's moving through this area versus how slowly it was moving in front of me. Shallower water is faster water. Hey, the wind actually helped to mend the line that time. That was bottom. And yeah, the reality of float fishing on a river is this. A lot of casting, a lot of mending your line. I know there's some other channels out there that would like to lead you to believe that you're out on the water for like 5 minutes, cast 3 times, and hook a fish. I don't want to give you the incorrect expectations. I want to show you the reality of fishing. Well, hello. I see I'm not the only one still here. Yeah, once your row gets to about that, good time to pull off the last bit of skein and put some more bait on. If you get about 10 casts out of a piece of row, you've got some good row. I'm actually real quick gonna see if I can snag my bobber. Yeah. Well, not only did I get that gear back, but I cleaned up the river. And should I lose this rig, got that other rig all tied up and ready to just tie on and go. Hey, you know, something else about salmon steelhead fishing. You know, you're gonna have a lot of guys telling you have to use this size line, you have to use this type of line, you have to use this size hook, you have to use this length of leader. Use whatever catches you fish. This has caught me fish over the years. I had about a 10-year span of time where I went salmon fishing annually and didn't catch a fish and kept changing what I was using until I started catching fish and stuck with it and kept catching fish until I wasn't able to do the fishing for a little while. And, you know, me talking about not always catching fish, and you know, that's not supposed to be a disclaimer to be like, oh, I didn't catch anything, watch the video anyway. That's just the reality of fishing. You don't catch fish from the couch? No, you catch fish from the shore. You actually get out on the water. Do you always catch fish? No, that's why it's called fishing, not catching. You just gotta get out and do it. So this is getting out and doing it. And as I've said plenty of times on this channel, every fishing experience is something to learn from. Something to sort of rehearse in your own mind, see what you could have done better, what you could have done differently, what worked, what didn't work. Even a no fish video is an informative video. Not saying I'm not gonna catch a fish, just saying I'm here to teach. It's worked for me, hopefully it'll work for you. Oh, that was a boot. That was a dark fish. And I think it's about that time to call it a trip. Yeah, it's time to call it a trip. It's hot, I'm hungry, and I haven't seen any fish activity in a while. No fish this time, but it's not the only time we're gonna go out this year. I got more trips planned this year, especially during the fall. I completely missed fall salmon fishing for the last 3 or 4 years, as long as I've been missing the salmon fishing too in the summer. But I hope you guys learned something from this video. If you guys did, hit that like button for me. And I want to know what you thought down in the comments below. Leave any tips and tricks you guys have down in the comments. I want to create a forum here where people can, you know, just join in and spread the knowledge and the love of fishing. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button down there and notify bell next to it. Click all notifications so you'll be the first to see all the great content that's going to come from this channel. Other than that, I'll just say thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, tips up, tight lines, and have fun fishing.